A man refuses to let a black officer sit in the coach, leaving her puzzled and on edge. Moments later, she hands him a simple note that turns everything upside down. What could be written in that note, and how does it change everything? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Agnes stepped into the bustling airport terminal, her crisp military uniform standing out among the sea of casual travelers. As she walked, she felt the familiar weight of people's gazes upon her. Some looked at her with respect, others with curiosity, and a few with discomfort. She'd grown used to these reactions over the years, but they still stirred a mix of emotions within her. Pride swelled in her chest as she caught sight of her reflection in a nearby window. The uniform represented everything she'd worked for, everything she believed in. But there was also a twinge of unease. Being in the spotlight, even for a moment, made her feel exposed. Agnes approached the check-in counter, her posture straight and her face composed. The attendant smiled warmly at her. "Thank you for your service, ma'am," he said, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "I have you in seat 23B. That's in coach. Is that all right?" "That's fine, thank you," Agnes replied with a nod. She didn't expect special treatment, nor did she want it. The idea of a cramped coach seat didn't bother her. She'd endured far worse during her service. As she made her way through security and towards her gate, Agnes felt the weariness of her recent mission settle into her bones. It had been long and grueling, testing her limits both physically and mentally. But she had persevered, as she always did. Finding a quiet corner near her gate, Agnes sat down and let out a deep breath. She closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself a rare instance of relaxation in public. Her mind drifted to the years she'd spent in the military, the challenges she'd faced, and the strength she'd found within herself. The military had shaped her in ways she never could have imagined when she first enlisted. It had taught her discipline, resilience, and the true meaning of service. But it had also shown her the harsh realities of the world, the weight of responsibility, and the cost of dedication. A voice over the intercom announced the boarding of her flight. Agnes stood up, shouldering her bag and joining the line of passengers. As she handed over her boarding pass and made her way down the jet bridge, she felt a sense of calm wash over her. She was heading home, back to familiar ground after weeks away. Stepping onto the plane, Agnes's military boots fell heavy on the aisle floor. The sound echoed slightly in the confined space, drawing a few glances from already seated passengers. She moved down the aisle with purpose, her eyes scanning for her seat number. As she approached row 23, Agnes was unaware of the event about to unfold. Her mind was on home, on rest, on the comfort of familiar surroundings. She had no idea that this routine flight was about to become anything but ordinary. Agnes settled into her seat in 23B, her movements practiced and efficient. She stowed her small bag under the seat in front of her and buckled her seatbelt, feeling the familiar click as it fastened. Around her, the plane buzzed with activity as other passengers continued to board. As she sat quietly, Agnes noticed a well-dressed man entering the plane. He was well-dressed and neat, with an air of confidence about him. She watched as he made his way down the aisle, his eyes darting between his boarding pass and the seat numbers overhead. With each step, his brow furrowed deeper, and his lips pressed into a thin line. Suddenly, the man stopped right at Agnes's row. He looked down at her, his eyes narrowing as they swept over her uniform. Agnes felt a knot form in her stomach as she met his gaze. "Excuse me," he said, his voice sharp and impatient. "I believe you're in my seat." Agnes blinked, taken aback by his cold tone. She double-checked her own boarding pass, confusion written across her face. "I'm sorry, sir, but I'm certain this is my assigned seat. 23B. The man's jaw clenched. "Well, clearly there's been a mistake because this is my seat." He thrust his boarding pass toward her, his frustration palpable. Agnes felt her cheeks grow warm as she noticed other passengers turning to watch the interaction. The air around them seemed to thicken with tension. She took a deep breath, trying to keep her voice calm and steady. "I understand your frustration, sir, but I assure you I'm in the correct seat. Perhaps we could ask a flight attendant for assistance." The man let out an exasperated sigh, running a hand through his hair. "This is ridiculous. I don't have time for this." Other passengers in nearby seats began to shift uncomfortably, some averting their eyes while others watched the scene unfold with poorly concealed interest. Agnes felt her discomfort grow, acutely aware of the attention they were drawing. A woman across the aisle leaned forward, her voice tentative. "Is everything okay? Can I help somehow?" The man turned to her, his face flushed with anger. "No, you can't help. This woman is in my seat, and she refuses to move." Agnes felt a surge of indignation at his words. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, a flight attendant appeared at the end of their row, her expression a mixture of concern and professionalism. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, looking between Agnes and the man. Agnes took a deep breath and reached for her boarding pass once more. With steady hands, she unfolded the paper and double-checked the seat number. Her eyes confirmed what she already knew. 23B. She was exactly where she was supposed to be. "I'm sorry, sir," Agnes said, her voice calm but firm, "but I can assure you that this is my assigned seat." She held up her boarding pass for him to see. Samuel's brow furrowed as he looked at her ticket, then back at his own. The frustration on his face deepened, and he let out a heavy sigh. "This doesn't make any sense," he muttered. Agnes felt a wave of embarrassment wash over her. She was acutely aware of the other passengers watching their exchange, their curious eyes darting between her and Samuel. The weight of their stares made her uniform feel suddenly too tight, too visible. Just as the tension between them seemed ready to boil over, something in Samuel's expression changed. His eyes widened slightly, and he paused, as if struck by a sudden realization. "Wait," he said, his voice softer now. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." He looked down at Agnes, his face flushing slightly. I'm not trying to take your seat." Agnes blinked, confusion replacing her frustration. "You're not?" Samuel shook his head, a sheepish smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "No, I'm actually in business class. I came back here because—" He paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "I wanted to offer you my seat." The words hung in the air between them, and Agnes felt as if all the oxygen had been sucked out of the plane. She stared at Samuel, trying to process what he'd just said. "You want to give me your seat?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Samuel nodded, his expression earnest. "Yes, it's a gesture of respect, really." He glanced at her uniform, his eyes softening. "My brother is in the military, you see. I understand the sacrifices people like you make every day. It's the least I can do to show my appreciation." Agnes felt her heart skip a beat. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. She was stunned by the unexpected offer, her mind reeling from the sudden turn of events. The other passengers, who moments ago had been watching with wary interest, now wore expressions of surprise and admiration. A few even smiled, touched by Samuel's gesture. As Agnes sat there struggling to find her voice, she found herself at a crossroads. Should she accept this kind stranger's offer? The comfort of a business-class seat was tempting after her long mission, but she had never been one to expect special treatment. The weight of the decision pressed down on her, leaving her uncertain of how to respond. Agnes shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her eyes darting between Samuel and the floor. The kindness in his offer was overwhelming, and she felt a lump forming in her throat. I appreciate the gesture, sir," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm fine here in coach. Really, I don't need any special treatment." Samuel's face softened, and he shook his head gently. "It's not about special treatment, ma'am. It's about respect for what you do." He paused, his eyes meeting hers. "My brother serves too, and I've seen firsthand the sacrifices you all make. Please let me do this small thing to show my gratitude." His sincerity caught Agnes off guard. She was used to people thanking her for her service, but this felt different. There was a depth to Samuel's words that touched something deep within her. Agnes looked around, suddenly aware of the other passengers watching their exchange. Some wore expressions of curiosity, others of admiration. She felt her resolve begin to waver. She started, then stopped. She took a deep breath, considering Samuel's offer once more. The weariness from her long mission weighed heavily on her shoulders, and the thought of a comfortable seat was tempting. After a moment of contemplation, Agnes nodded slowly. "Okay," she said softly. "Thank you. I accept your offer." Samuel's face lit up with a warm smile. "I'm glad," he said, stepping back to give her room to stand. Agnes rose from her seat, her movements deliberate as she gathered her belongings. As she stepped into the aisle, she felt the eyes of the other passengers following her. The atmosphere in the cabin had shifted, the earlier tension replaced by a sense of awe. She walked slowly up the aisle, her military boots making a soft thud with each step. The weight of her uniform felt different now, not a burden, but a symbol of something greater. As Agnes made her way towards the business class section, she could hear whispers of admiration from the other passengers. Some smiled at her, others nodded respectfully. The simple act of kindness from Samuel had transformed the entire mood of the plane. Agnes settled into the plush business class seat, her mind still reeling from the unexpected turn of events. The spacious legroom and comfortable cushioning were a stark contrast to the cramped coach seat she had just left. She ran her hand along the armrest, feeling almost out of place in such luxury. As the last passengers boarded, Agnes found herself lost in thought. Samuel's act of kindness had caught her completely off guard. In her years of service, she had grown accustomed to people treating her differently because of her uniform. Some would offer a quick, "Thank you for your service," while others seemed uncomfortable around her. But this was something entirely different. Agnes closed her eyes, remembering the sincerity in Samuel's voice when he spoke about his brother. It wasn't just empty words or a show for others. He truly understood the sacrifices that came with serving one's country. Despite her gratitude, a gnawing feeling of guilt began to creep into Agnes's chest. She glanced back toward the coach section, trying to spot Samuel. After a moment, she saw him, his tall frame folded into the seat she had vacated. He looked slightly cramped, but there was a content smile on his face as he settled in for the flight. The sight made Agnes's heart clench. Here was a man who had given up his comfort for a complete stranger, simply out of respect and gratitude. She felt a sudden urge to do something, anything, to repay his unexpected act of generosity. But what could she do? Agnes racked her brain, trying to think of a way to show her appreciation. A simple thank you didn't seem nearly enough. As the flight attendants began their pre-flight routine, Agnes made up her mind. She needed to find a way to repay Samuel's kindness, to show him that his gesture meant more to her than he could know. As the plane reached its cruising altitude, Agnes found herself unable to relax. The act of kindness from Samuel kept replaying in her mind. She felt a strong urge to express her gratitude, but wasn't sure how. Suddenly, an idea struck her. Agnes pressed the call button, and within moments, a friendly flight attendant appeared by her side. "Excuse me," Agnes said softly. "Could I please have a napkin and a pen?" The attendant smiled warmly. "Of course, ma'am. I'll be right back with those for you." As Agnes waited, she pondered what to write. She wanted her words to convey the depth of her appreciation without sounding overly dramatic. When the attendant returned with the requested items, Agnes thanked her and began to write. Her pen hovered over the napkin for a moment before she started. "Dear Samuel, your kindness today has touched me deeply. In a world where people often look away, you chose to see me and honor my service in a way I never expected. I'd like to thank you properly by treating you to dinner. If you're interested, please let me know. Sincerely, Agnes." She read over the note several times, making sure it struck the right tone. Satisfied, she carefully folded the napkin and called the flight attendant over once more. "Would it be possible for you to deliver this to the gentleman in seat 23B?" Agnes asked, her voice tinged with a hint of nervousness. The attendant's eyes twinkled with understanding. "Of course, I'd be happy to." As the flight attendant made her way down the aisle, Agnes felt a flutter of anticipation in her stomach. She watched as the note was discreetly handed to Samuel, her heart racing as he unfolded it. From her vantage point, Agnes could only see the back of Samuel's head. She found herself holding her breath, waiting for any sign of his reaction. The moment seemed to stretch on endlessly as she wondered what he might think of her offer. A mix of nervousness and excitement coursed through Agnes as she waited. Would he accept her invitation? Had she been too forward? The uncertainty of the situation left her feeling both anxious and oddly exhilarated. Samuel unfolded the napkin, his eyes scanning the handwritten words. A warm smile spread across his face as he read Agnes's heartfelt message. He was touched by her sincerity and the unexpected invitation. Without hesitation, Samuel waved over the flight attendant. "Could you please let the officer in business class know that I'd be honored to accept her dinner invitation?" he asked, his voice filled with genuine enthusiasm. The attendant nodded, a knowing smile on her face. "Of course, sir. I'll let her know right away." As the flight attendant made her way back to business class, Agnes sat up straighter, her heart racing with anticipation. When the attendant reached her, she leaned in close. "Ma'am, the gentleman in 23B asked me to tell you that he'd be honored to accept your dinner invitation," she said softly. Agnes's eyes widened in surprise. She hadn't expected such a quick and positive response. A mix of excitement and nervousness bubbled up inside her. "Thank you," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. As the flight attendant moved on, Agnes found herself smiling. What had started as a simple act of kindness was now blossoming into a potential friendship. She marveled at how quickly things had changed since she first boarded the plane. As the plane began its descent, Agnes shifted in her comfortable business class seat. She gazed out the window, watching the landscape below grow larger. Her mind wandered to the unexpected turn of events that had led her here. Agnes couldn't help but smile as she thought about Samuel's kind gesture. It wasn't often that people surprised her like that. She felt a flutter of excitement in her stomach at the thought of their upcoming dinner. What would they talk about? Would it be awkward? She shook her head, trying to calm her nerves. "It's just a thank you dinner," she whispered to herself. But deep down she knew it was more than that. It was a chance to connect with someone who seemed to genuinely appreciate her service. Meanwhile, several rows behind her, Samuel settled back in his coach seat. He didn't mind the cramped space. The warmth in his heart from helping Agnes made up for any discomfort. He found himself looking forward to their dinner, curious to learn more about the strong, dignified woman in uniform. What neither of them realized was that their simple act of kindness had caught fire online. Unbeknownst to Agnes and Samuel, their exchange had caught the attention of a nearby passenger. The woman, seated just a few rows behind Agnes, had been watching the entire interaction unfold with growing interest. Intrigued by the story playing out before her, the passenger discreetly pulled out her phone. She snapped a quick photo of Agnes in her uniform, then began typing furiously on her screen. Her fingers flew across her phone as she composed a social media post, eager to share the heartwarming story she had witnessed. The woman glanced up occasionally, making sure she wasn't drawing attention to herself as she continued to type. The post read, "Just witnessed something amazing. A kind stranger gave up his business class seat to a military officer. Faith in humanity restored. Hashtag, thank you for your service. Hashtag, random acts of kindness." As the plane continued its descent, the post gained traction. People from all walks of life were touched by the story. They shared it, commented on it, and it spread like wildfire across various platforms. "This is what America is all about," one comment read. "We need more people like this in the world," said another. The story was picking up steam, but Agnes and Samuel remained blissfully unaware of their growing online fame. Their minds were focused on the present moment and the promise of a shared meal. The plane touched down with a gentle bump. As the seatbelt sign switched off, Agnes stood up, straightening her uniform. She took a deep breath, mentally preparing herself for the dinner ahead. Samuel, too, rose from his seat, stretching after the long flight. He scanned the crowd of disembarking passengers, hoping to catch a glimpse of Agnes. As they both made their way to the exit, neither of them had any idea of the storm brewing online. or how their simple interaction was touching hearts across the nation. After a few days, Agnes arrived at the upscale restaurant first, her heart fluttering with a mix of excitement and nervousness. She smoothed down her dress, feeling a bit out of place in the fancy setting. The soft glow of candlelight and the gentle clinking of silverware created a warm, inviting atmosphere. As she waited, Samuel walked in, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on her. A smile spread across his face as he approached the table. "Agnes," he said warmly, "you look lovely." Agnes felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. "Thank you, Samuel, and thank you again for your kindness on the plane." They settled into their seats, the waiter bringing menus and water. As they perused the options, Samuel broke the ice. "So, tell me about your service," he said, his eyes shining with genuine interest. Agnes hesitated for a moment, then began to share. She told him about her decision to join the military, the challenges she faced as a black woman in a predominantly male environment, and the pride she felt in serving her country. Samuel listened intently, nodding and asking thoughtful questions. When she finished, he leaned forward, his expression serious. "My brother went through similar experiences," he said softly. "He always said the hardest part wasn't the physical demands, but the mental and emotional toll." Agnes nodded, feeling a connection forming between them. "It can be tough," she admitted, "but it's also incredibly rewarding." As the evening progressed, they shared more stories. Samuel talked about his brother's resilience in the face of adversity, and Agnes opened up about the challenges she'd overcome in her own career. "There were times I wanted to give up," she confessed, her voice low. "But I knew I had to keep going, not just for myself, but for those who would come after me." Samuel reached across the table, briefly touching her hand. "That's incredibly brave," he said, his voice filled with admiration. As they enjoyed their meal, the conversation flowed easily. They discovered they had much in common: a strong work ethic, a desire to make a difference, and a deep respect for those who serve. Agnes found herself laughing more than she had in months. Samuel's wit and warmth put her at ease, making her feel comfortable sharing parts of herself she usually kept hidden. As the evening drew to a close, they lingered over dessert, neither wanting the night to end. Agnes felt a warmth in her chest, a growing fondness for this kind, thoughtful man. "I'm really glad you accepted my dinner invitation," she said, smiling softly. Samuel's eyes crinkled as he returned her smile. "Me too, Agnes. This has been a wonderful evening." As they stood to leave, there was a moment of hesitation, both feeling the connection that had formed between them. They said their goodbyes, each hoping this wouldn't be the last time they saw each other. Agnes stepped into her modest apartment, her mind still swirling with thoughts of the evening. She slipped off her heels and sank onto the couch, a soft smile playing on her lips. The dinner with Samuel had been more than just a thank you. It had been a revelation. As she replayed the conversation in her head, Agnes felt a warmth spread through her chest. Samuel's genuine interest in her experiences, his understanding of the challenges she faced, and his kind eyes that seemed to see right through her tough exterior. It all left her feeling seen in a way she hadn't in years. She reached for her phone, tempted to send him a message, but hesitated. Was it too soon? Agnes shook her head, chuckling at herself. She was a seasoned military officer, yet here she was, feeling like a nervous teenager. Meanwhile, across town, Samuel unlocked the door to his home, his steps light and his heart full. He hung up his jacket and loosened his tie, unable to wipe the smile off his face. The evening with Agnes had been more than he could have hoped for. As he poured himself a glass of water, Samuel found himself reliving every moment of their dinner. Agnes's strength, her vulnerability, the way her eyes lit up when she laughed. It all left a lasting impression on him. He admired her resilience and the passion she had for her service. Samuel sat on the edge of his bed holding his phone. He wanted to reach out, to let Agnes know how much he had enjoyed their time together, but he hesitated. He didn't want to come on too strong or make her uncomfortable. Both Agnes and Samuel found themselves lost in thought, replaying the evening's events. There was an undeniable connection between them, a spark that neither had expected, but both welcomed. It wasn't just friendship they felt blossoming. There was a potential for something deeper, something more meaningful. Yet neither was ready to put a name to these feelings. Agnes, always cautious and guarded, told herself it was too soon to think beyond friendship. Samuel, respectful and mindful of Agnes's position, reminded himself not to rush things. As they prepared for bed in their separate homes, both Agnes and Samuel felt a sense of anticipation. Whatever was growing between them, whether friendship or something more, held the promise of something beautiful. They looked forward to seeing where this unexpected connection might lead, even if they weren't quite ready to admit it to themselves just yet. The next morning, Agnes woke up to her phone buzzing nonstop. She rubbed her eyes, confused by the flood of notifications. As she scrolled through her messages, her eyes widened in disbelief. "Have you seen this?" read a text from her cousin, followed by a link to a social media post. Agnes clicked on it and her jaw dropped. There, in vivid detail, was an account of her encounter with Samuel on the plane. The post had thousands of likes and shares, with comments pouring in from people all over the country. "Oh my goodness," Agnes whispered, her heart racing. She felt a mix of emotions: surprise, embarrassment, and a touch of anxiety. She had always been a private person, preferring to stay out of the limelight. Now suddenly she was at the center of a viral story. As she got ready for her day, her phone kept pinging with more messages. Colleagues, old friends, even distant acquaintances were reaching out. Some congratulated her on her service, others praised Samuel's kindness, and a few asked for more details about what happened. Agnes felt overwhelmed. She appreciated the kind words, but the attention made her uncomfortable. She worried about how this might affect her career, or if people would treat her differently now. Across town, Samuel was experiencing a similar morning. He woke up to find his social media flooded with notifications. Friends and family were tagging him in the viral post, praising his gesture. At first, Samuel felt a warm glow of pride. He hadn't offered his seat for recognition, but it was nice to see people appreciating the importance of respecting military service. However, as he read through more comments, his concern grew. Some people were speculating about his relationship with Agnes, while others were digging into their personal lives. Samuel's brow furrowed as he thought about Agnes. He knew how private she was, and how much she valued her independence. "This isn't what I wanted," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. He worried that the viral attention might make Agnes regret their dinner, or worse, push her away entirely. As the day progressed, both Agnes and Samuel found it hard to focus on their usual routines. The constant ping of notifications and the weight of unexpected public attention left them feeling exposed and uncertain about what to do next. Agnes and Samuel agreed to meet at a quiet coffee shop to discuss the viral post that had turned their lives upside down. As Agnes walked in, she spotted Samuel already seated in a corner booth, 2 steaming cups of coffee waiting on the table. "Hey," Agnes said softly, sliding into the seat across from him. "This is all so crazy, isn't it?" Samuel nodded, his eyes filled with concern. "I'm so sorry, Agnes. I never meant for this to happen." Agnes took a deep breath, her hands wrapped around the warm mug. "I know you didn't. It's just, I've always kept to myself, you know, and now everyone's talking about us." Samuel leaned forward, his voice gentle but earnest. "I understand how overwhelming this is, but maybe we can turn this into something good?" Agnes raised an eyebrow, curious. "What do you mean?" "Well," Samuel began, his eyes lighting up with enthusiasm, "we have all this attention right now. What if we used it to help others, to raise awareness for military causes, especially those supporting veterans?" Agnes sat back, considering his words. The idea of being in the spotlight made her stomach churn, but the thought of helping her fellow service members tugged at her heart. "I don't know, Samuel," she said hesitantly. "I'm not sure I'm ready for all that attention." Samuel reached across the table, gently placing his hand on hers. "I get it, Agnes. It's a lot. But think about all the good we could do. We could shine a light on issues that often get overlooked." As Samuel spoke, his passion was contagious. Agnes felt a small spark of hope ignite within her. "We could talk about the challenges veterans face when they come home," Samuel continued. "The need for better mental health support, job training programs, housing assistance. Agnes nodded slowly, her mind racing with possibilities. And maybe we could highlight the experiences of women and people of color in the military. There are so many stories that need to be told. Samuel's face broke into a wide smile. Exactly. We have this platform now, even if we didn't ask for it. Why not use it to make a difference? As they talked, Agnes felt her initial fear and hesitation start to fade. Samuel's enthusiasm and support were helping her see the situation in a new light. You really think we could make a difference? Agnes asked, a hint of hope in her voice. Samuel squeezed her hand gently. I really do. And Agnes, you won't be alone in this. I'll be right there with you, every step of the way. For the first time since the post went viral, Agnes felt a sense of purpose replacing her anxiety. She looked at Samuel, a small smile forming on her lips. Okay, she said softly. Let's do it. Let's see how we can help. As the days passed, Agnes and Samuel's phones buzzed constantly with notifications. Interview requests poured in from local news stations, national morning shows, and even a few popular podcasts. The sudden attention was overwhelming, but Samuel's calm demeanor helped keep Agnes grounded. Another request, Samuel said, holding up his phone during one of their frequent coffee meetups. This time it's from Good Morning America. Agnes's eyes widened. Good Morning America? That's huge. Samuel nodded, his eyes twinkling with excitement. It is, but remember, we're doing this for a reason. We can reach so many people and really make a difference. Agnes took a deep breath, steeling herself. You're right. It's not about us. It's about all the veterans who need support. As they navigated the media storm together, Samuel took the lead, helping Agnes prepare for interviews and manage the flood of messages. He showed her how to craft responses that redirected the focus from their personal story to the broader issues facing veterans. See? Samuel said, pointing to a message on Agnes's phone. This veteran says our story inspired him to seek help for his PTSD. That's why we're doing this. Agnes felt a warmth spread through her chest. You're right. It's making a real difference. With each interview, Agnes grew more confident. She spoke passionately about the challenges faced by women and people of color in the military, while Samuel highlighted the importance of mental health support for all veterans. Their partnership flourished under the spotlight. Agnes found herself relying on Samuel's steady presence, his reassuring smile always there when she felt overwhelmed. And Samuel, in turn, was constantly in awe of Agnes's strength and dedication. One evening, after a particularly impactful interview, Samuel turned to Agnes with a soft smile. You were amazing today. The way you spoke about your experiences, I think you touched a lot of hearts. Agnes felt a blush creep up her cheeks. I couldn't have done it without you, Samuel. Having you by my side, it makes all of this so much easier. As they continued their advocacy work, their bond deepened. What had started as a chance encounter on a plane had blossomed into a partnership built on mutual respect, shared values, and a growing affection that neither of them could deny. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow through the restaurant windows, Agnes and Samuel settled into their now familiar routine of dinner and conversation. The clinking of cutlery and the soft murmur of other diners created a cozy backdrop for their meeting. I can't believe it's been a month since that flight, Agnes said, shaking her head in disbelief. The media attention doesn't seem to be dying down at all. Samuel nodded, his eyes twinkling. It's amazing, isn't it? But I think we've done a good job of steering the conversation towards what really matters. Agnes smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest at his words. We have, and I've been thinking, maybe we could do more. What did you have in mind? Samuel leaned forward, his interest piqued. Well, Agnes began, her voice growing animated, what if we organized a series of charitable events? We could raise funds for veteran support programs, bring more awareness to the issues we've been talking about. Samuel's face lit up. That's a brilliant idea, Agnes. We could start with a gala dinner, maybe follow it up with a charity run. As they brainstormed, their excitement grew. Ideas flowed freely between them, each building on the other's suggestions. They barely noticed as their meals arrived, too engrossed in their plans. "We could reach out to some of the veteran organizations we've connected with," Agnes suggested, her fork pausing midway to her mouth. "I'm sure they'd be happy to collaborate." Samuel nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely. And with our newfound platform, we might even be able to get some corporate sponsors on board." As the evening wore on, their conversation drifted from their charitable plans to more personal topics. They shared stories from their childhoods, laughed over embarrassing moments, and discovered new things about each other. Agnes found herself captivated by the way Samuel's eyes crinkled when he laughed, the passion in his voice when he spoke about helping others. She caught herself wondering what it would be like to hold his hand across the table. Samuel, too, felt the pull of something deeper than friendship. He admired the way Agnes's face lit up when she talked about her work, the strength and vulnerability she showed in equal measure. He had to resist the urge to reach out and tuck a stray strand of hair behind her ear. As the waiter cleared their dessert plates, Agnes and Samuel shared a look that lingered just a moment too long. The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken feelings. "So," Samuel said, his voice slightly husky, "same time next week to start planning our first event?" Agnes nodded, a soft smile playing on her lips. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." The grand ballroom buzzed with excitement as guests in elegant attire mingled, their voices a cheerful hum against the soft background music. Agnes stood near the entrance, greeting attendees with a warm smile. She looked stunning in a deep blue gown that complemented her military medals, pinned proudly to her chest. Samuel appeared at her side, looking dapper in a tailored suit. He leaned in close, his voice low and reassuring. "Everything's going perfectly, Agnes. You've done an amazing job." Agnes felt a flutter in her chest at his nearness. "We did this together, Samuel. I couldn't have pulled it off without you." As the evening progressed, Agnes and Samuel moved through the crowd with ease, sharing their passion for veteran support with everyone they met. They worked in perfect sync, seamlessly picking up where the other left off in conversations. The highlight of the night came when Agnes took the stage to deliver a heartfelt speech about the importance of supporting veterans. Her words, powerful and genuine, brought tears to many eyes in the room. Samuel watched from the side, his heart swelling with pride and admiration. When it was time to announce the total funds raised, Samuel joined Agnes on stage. They stood close, shoulders almost touching, as they revealed the impressive figure. The room erupted in applause, and without thinking, Samuel wrapped an arm around Agnes's waist in celebration. As the event wound down, Agnes and Samuel found themselves alone on the balcony, overlooking the twinkling city lights. The cool night air was a welcome respite from the warmth of the ballroom. "We did it," Agnes said softly, her eyes shining with joy and unshed tears. "We really made a difference tonight." Samuel turned to face her, his expression serious yet tender. "We make a great team, Agnes, not just for charity work, but—" He paused, gathering courage. "I think we work well together in every way." Agnes felt her heart race as she met his gaze. The air between them seemed charged with possibility. She realized in that moment that their connection went far beyond friendship or a shared cause. They had become partners in every sense of the word. "I think you're right," Agnes replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She reached out and took Samuel's hand, intertwining their fingers. The simple gesture felt like the most natural thing in the world. As they stood there, hand in hand, Agnes and Samuel both knew that this was just the beginning. They had found in each other not just a partner for their charitable work, but a potential partner for life. After the successful charity event, Samuel and Agnes found themselves at an intimate Italian restaurant, nestled in a quiet corner of the city. The warm glow of candlelight flickered across their faces as they sat across from each other, still buzzing with excitement from the evening's triumph. "I can't believe how well everything went," Agnes said, her eyes sparkling with joy. "I never thought we'd raise so much for the veterans." Samuel nodded, a soft smile playing on his lips. "It was amazing, but I'm not surprised. When you spoke, Agnes, everyone in that room could feel your passion." As they sipped their wine and enjoyed their meal, the conversation flowed easily between them. They recounted funny moments from the event and shared their hopes for future projects. But as the night wore on, their talk turned to more personal matters. Samuel set down his fork and took a deep breath. "You know, Agnes, I haven't always had it easy. Growing up, my family struggled a lot financially." Agnes leaned in, her full attention on Samuel. She could sense he was about to share something important. "My brother joining the military was as much about serving our country as it was about finding a way out of poverty," Samuel continued. "Watching him overcome those obstacles inspired me to work hard and make something of myself." Agnes reached across the table and placed her hand on Samuel's. "That couldn't have been easy. I'm so glad you shared that with me." Encouraged by her warmth, Samuel opened up further. He told her about the long nights working multiple jobs to put himself through college, the times he doubted himself, and the small victories that kept him going. As Samuel spoke, Agnes felt a growing admiration for him. She saw beyond his charming exterior to the depth of his character, shaped by his struggles and triumphs. When Samuel finished, he looked at Agnes with vulnerable eyes. "I've never really told anyone all of that before," he admitted softly. Agnes squeezed his hand gently. "Thank you for trusting me with your story, Samuel. It means more than you know." In that moment, as they sat there with hands intertwined, Agnes realized she was feeling something she hadn't experienced in a very long time. A connection that went beyond friendship or shared goals. It was a spark of something deeper, something that both excited and scared her. Samuel seemed to sense the shift too. His eyes met hers, and a look of understanding passed between them. Neither spoke, but in the comfortable silence that followed, they both knew that their relationship had just taken a significant turn. As the weeks passed, Agnes and Samuel found themselves drawn to each other more and more. Their charity work continued to flourish, but they both felt a desire to spend time together outside of their philanthropic efforts. One evening, Agnes's phone buzzed with a text from Samuel. "Dinner tonight? I know a great little place downtown." A smile spread across her face as she typed her reply. "I'd love to." That night, they met at a cozy bistro tucked away from the bustling city streets. As they sat across from each other, Agnes couldn't help but marvel at how comfortable she felt in Samuel's presence. "You know," Samuel said, his eyes twinkling, "I never thought offering my seat on that flight would lead to all this." Agnes laughed softly. "Me neither, but I'm glad it did." Their conversation flowed effortlessly, touching on topics both light and deep. They shared stories from their childhoods, dreams for the future, and everything in between. As the evening wore on, Agnes realized how much she looked forward to these moments with Samuel. Over the next few weeks, they managed to carve out time for each other despite their hectic schedules. Sometimes it was a quick lunch between meetings, other times a leisurely dinner that stretched late into the night. Each encounter brought them closer, their bond growing stronger with every shared laugh and heartfelt conversation. During one of their dinners, Agnes found herself opening up about her experiences in the military, the challenges she faced as a woman of color, the pride she felt in serving her country, and the moments of doubt that sometimes crept in. Samuel listened intently, his hand reaching across the table to hold hers. "Agnes, you're one of the strongest people I've ever met," he said softly. His words touched her deeply, and Agnes felt a warmth spread through her chest. She realized that what had started as a simple act of kindness on a flight had blossomed into something she never expected, a connection that felt real, deep, and full of potential. As the media frenzy surrounding Agnes and Samuel's story began to subside, they found themselves with more time to focus on each other. The constant interviews and public appearances had slowed to a trickle, allowing them to breathe and explore their growing connection without the world watching. One lazy Sunday afternoon, they decided to take a stroll through a nearby park. The autumn leaves crunched beneath their feet as they walked side by side, their hands occasionally brushing against each other. Agnes felt a flutter in her chest each time Samuel's fingers grazed hers. It was a feeling she wasn't used to, one that both excited and scared her. For so long, her life had revolved around her military career. She had never allowed herself to entertain the idea of a serious relationship. "You're awfully quiet," Samuel said. his voice gentle. "Penny for your thoughts?" Agnes smiled, her eyes meeting his. "I was just thinking about how unexpected all of this is. You, me, us spending time together like this." Samuel nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I know what you mean. When I offered you my seat on that flight, I never imagined we'd end up here." They found a bench overlooking a small pond and sat down. Agnes felt Samuel's arm rest lightly on the back of the bench behind her, not quite touching but close enough to make her heart race. "You know," Samuel began, his voice soft, "I've really enjoyed getting to know you, Agnes. These past few weeks have been special." Agnes felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. "I've enjoyed it too," she admitted, surprised by how easy it was to say out loud. As they sat there watching the ducks glide across the pond's surface, Agnes realized how comfortable she felt with Samuel. It wasn't just their shared respect for the military or their work with the charity. There was something more, a connection that ran deeper than she had expected. Samuel, too, was lost in thought. He had always admired those who served, but getting to know Agnes had given him a new perspective. Her strength, her dedication, and her vulnerability had touched him in ways he hadn't anticipated. "Agnes," he said, turning to face her, "I hope you know how much I care about you. This thing between us, it's more than just friendship for me." Agnes felt her breath catch in her throat. She had been so focused on her career for so long that the idea of opening her heart to someone else was both thrilling and terrifying. "I care about you too, Samuel," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "More than I thought possible." As they sat there, the autumn sun warming their faces, both Agnes and Samuel realized that what had started as a chance encounter on a flight had blossomed into something beautiful and unexpected. Their shared respect for service had laid the foundation, but it was their genuine connection that was building something more. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow through the restaurant's windows, Agnes and Samuel sat across from each other at a cozy table. The soft candlelight flickered between them, illuminating their faces and the growing affection in their eyes. Samuel took a deep breath, his hands fidgeting with the napkin on his lap. He had rehearsed this moment in his head countless times, but now that it was here, he felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. "Agnes," he began, his voice soft but steady, "I need to tell you something." Agnes looked up from her plate, her dark eyes meeting his. "What is it, Samuel?" she asked, sensing the seriousness in his tone. "I've fallen for you, Agnes," he confessed, his eyes never leaving hers. "This connection we have, it goes beyond anything I could have ever anticipated. You're not just the woman I met on that flight anymore. You've become someone incredibly special to me." Agnes sat there, momentarily stunned by Samuel's words. A wave of relief washed over her as she realized that the feelings she had been grappling with weren't one-sided. "Samuel," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, I've been feeling the same way. I just didn't know how to say it." Samuel's face lit up with a mixture of joy and relief. He squeezed her hand gently, encouraging her to continue. "My whole life has been about service and duty," Agnes explained, her voice growing stronger. "I never expected to find someone who understood that part of me so well. But you do, Samuel. You've shown me that there's room in my life for both my career and love." As the word love left her lips, Agnes felt a warmth spread through her chest. It was a feeling she had never experienced before, but one she knew she wanted to hold on to. Samuel stood up, moving to Agnes's side of the table. He knelt beside her chair, still holding her hand. "Agnes, I want you to know that I'm here for you, in whatever way you need me to be. We can take this as slow or as fast as you want." Agnes looked down at Samuel, her eyes glistening with unshed tears of happiness. She reached out, cupping his face with her free hand. "Thank you, Samuel, for everything. For that day on the plane, for supporting me through the media attention, and for being patient with me as I figured out my feelings." With their feelings now out in the open, Agnes and Samuel embarked on a new chapter in their relationship. The days that followed were filled with a newfound joy and excitement as they explored their deepening connection. They began to see each other more frequently, making time in their busy schedules for dinner dates, long walks in the park, and quiet evenings spent talking about their hopes and dreams. Agnes found herself opening up more than she ever had before, sharing stories from her military service that she had kept close to her heart. Samuel listened intently, his admiration for her growing with each tale of bravery and sacrifice. "I never thought I'd find someone who understands this part of me so well," Agnes confessed one evening, as they sat on a park bench, watching the sunset. Samuel squeezed her hand gently. "I feel honored that you trust me enough to share these stories, Agnes. It helps me understand you better." As their personal relationship blossomed, they also continued their work advocating for veterans. They organized more charity events, using their platform to raise awareness and funds for various veteran support programs. Their partnership in this endeavor seemed to strengthen their bond even further. At one such event, Agnes stood at the podium addressing a room full of supporters. Samuel watched from the sidelines, his heart swelling with pride. "Thanks to your generosity," Agnes said, her voice strong and clear. "We've been able to provide housing assistance for over 50 veteran families this month alone." The room erupted in applause, and Agnes's eyes found Samuel's in the crowd. They shared a smile, both feeling the satisfaction of making a real difference in people's lives. After the event, as they were packing up, Samuel pulled Agnes into a warm embrace. "You were amazing up there," he said, planting a soft kiss on her forehead. Agnes leaned into his embrace, feeling a sense of contentment she had never experienced before. "We make a pretty good team, don't we?" she said, looking up at him with a smile. "The best," Samuel agreed, his eyes twinkling. As the weeks turned into months, Agnes and Samuel found a beautiful rhythm in their relationship. They balanced their time between romantic outings, quiet nights in, and their continued work for veterans. Their love for each other grew stronger with each passing day, as did their commitment to making a difference in the lives of those who had served. Agnes and Samuel arrived hand in hand at the grand ballroom, where their latest charity event was being held. The room was beautifully decorated with patriotic colors, and the air buzzed with excitement. As they walked in, heads turned and smiles spread across faces. This was their first public appearance as a couple, and the warmth of the reception was palpable. "Look at you two," exclaimed Mrs. Watson, one of their regular donors. "I always knew there was something special between you both." Agnes felt a blush creep up her cheeks, but Samuel squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Thank you, Mrs. Watson," he said with a charming smile. "We're very happy." As they made their way through the crowd, they were met with congratulations and well wishes from all sides. Agnes, who had always been private about her personal life, found herself surprisingly at ease with the attention. She realized that the support they were receiving wasn't just for their relationship, but for everything they stood for, their dedication to veterans' causes, and their commitment to making a difference. During a quiet moment, Agnes's phone buzzed with a message. It was from her mother. "So proud of you, honey. Samuel is a wonderful man. Your father and I are thrilled for you both." Agnes showed the message to Samuel, her eyes misting over slightly. "I never thought I'd have this," she said softly. "Someone who understands me, supports me, and shares my passion for helping others." Samuel wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close. "You deserve all of this and more, Agnes. I'm the lucky one here." As the evening progressed, they took to the stage together to address the attendees. The applause that greeted them was thunderous. Agnes looked out at the sea of faces, friends, family, supporters, all beaming with joy for them. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Agnes began, her voice strong and clear. "Your support means the world to us, not just personally, but for the cause we hold so dear." Samuel nodded in agreement. "Together, we've been able to make real changes in the lives of veterans. And now, as partners in every sense of the word, Agnes and I are more committed than ever to this mission." The crowd erupted in cheers, and Agnes felt a deep sense of contentment wash over her. She had found not just a partner in life, but someone who truly understood her, valued her dedication to service, and shared her passion for making a difference. As she looked at Samuel, she knew that together, they could accomplish anything. As the weeks turned into months, Agnes and Samuel's relationship blossomed like a beautiful flower in spring. They spent more and more time together, finding comfort and joy in each other's company. Their shared passion for helping veterans continued to be a cornerstone of their bond, but they also discovered new things about each other every day. One cozy evening, as they sat on Agnes's porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant hues, Samuel turned to Agnes with a soft smile. "You know, I never thought a simple act of kindness on a plane would lead to this," he said, his voice filled with warmth. Agnes leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest. "Me neither," she replied, "but I'm so glad it did." As the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, their conversation drifted to the future. Samuel gently took Agnes's hand in his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Have you ever thought about where you see yourself in a few years?" he asked, his voice tinged with curiosity and a hint of nervousness. Agnes sat up straighter, her eyes meeting Samuel's. "I have," she admitted, "especially lately. I see myself continuing my work in the military, but I also see us." She paused, her heart racing. "Together." Samuel's face lit up with joy. "I see that too," he said softly. "I see us building a life together, supporting each other's dreams, and making a difference in the world side by side." As they talked, their hopes and dreams intertwined like vines growing stronger together. They spoke of a home filled with love and laughter, of continuing their work for veterans, but also exploring new ways to help their community. They dreamed of travels to far-off places and quiet evenings at home, of facing life's challenges as a team and celebrating each other's successes. Agnes felt a warmth spread through her chest as she listened to Samuel share his vision for their future. She had always been focused on her career, never allowing herself to imagine a life where love and service could coexist so beautifully. But with Samuel, it all seemed possible. "You know," Agnes said, her voice filled with emotion, "I never thought I'd find someone who understands me the way you do. Someone who respects my dedication to service but also helps me see that there's room for love, and a personal life too." Samuel squeezed her hand gently. "And I never thought I'd meet someone as strong and compassionate as you, Agnes. You inspire me every day to be a better person." As the night grew deeper, Agnes and Samuel sat in comfortable silence, both feeling grateful for the twist of fate that had brought them together. They knew that the road ahead might have its challenges, but they were excited to face them together, hand in hand, heart to heart. Agnes sat by the window in her apartment, gazing out at the bustling city below. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the buildings, and she found herself lost in thought. It had been almost a year since that fateful flight, and she couldn't help but marvel at how much her life had changed. She closed her eyes, remembering the moment Samuel had offered her his business class seat. At the time, it had seemed like a simple act of kindness, one that had both surprised and touched her. But now, looking back, Agnes realized it had been the beginning of something much bigger. A smile played on her lips as she thought about Samuel. What had started as a gesture of respect between strangers had blossomed into a deep, meaningful relationship. Agnes had always been focused on her military career, never allowing herself to imagine finding love. But Samuel had shown her that it was possible to have both: a fulfilling career and a loving partnership. Their shared passion for helping veterans had given them a new purpose. Together, they had organized charity events, raised awareness, and made a real difference in the lives of those who had served. Agnes felt a sense of pride wash over her as she thought about the impact they had made. She picked up a framed photo from her desk, a snapshot of her and Samuel at their latest fundraising event. Their eyes were bright, their smiles genuine, and there was an undeniable connection between them that radiated from the image. Agnes traced Samuel's face with her finger, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over her. This unexpected love had changed her in ways she never thought possible. She was still the dedicated, strong military officer she had always been, but now she had learned to open her heart, to let someone in. Samuel's unwavering support and understanding had shown her that vulnerability could be a strength, not a weakness. As she set the photo back down, Agnes reflected on the journey they had taken together. From that first dinner after the flight to the countless moments they had shared since then, each step had brought them closer. She thought about how Samuel had stood by her side as they navigated the unexpected media attention, how he had encouraged her to use their story to make a difference. Agnes felt a warmth spread through her chest as she realized how much richer her life had become. The love she shared with Samuel, the sense of purpose they had found together in their advocacy work. It all stemmed from that one moment of kindness on a plane. Agnes and Samuel stood hand in hand on the front porch of Agnes's childhood home. The warm summer breeze rustled through the trees, carrying with it the sweet scent of blooming flowers. Agnes took a deep breath, her heart racing with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "Are you ready?" Samuel asked, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. Agnes nodded, a smile spreading across her face. "As ready as I'll ever be." They stepped inside and Agnes called out, "Mom, Dad, we're here!" The sound of footsteps echoed through the house, and soon Agnes's parents appeared, their faces beaming with joy. Agnes's mother rushed forward, enveloping her daughter in a tight hug before turning to Samuel. "It's so wonderful to finally meet you, Samuel," she said, pulling him into an embrace as well. "We've heard so much about you." Agnes's father shook Samuel's hand firmly. "Welcome to our home, son. We're glad you could join us." As they settled in the living room, Agnes watched with delight as Samuel charmed her parents with stories of their charity work and their shared passion for helping veterans. Her heart swelled with pride and love, seeing how easily he fit into her family. A few weeks later, it was Samuel's turn to introduce Agnes to his family. They gathered at his brother's house for a backyard barbecue, the air filled with laughter and the smell of grilling food. Samuel's brother, still in his military uniform, approached Agnes with a warm smile. "It's an honor to meet you, Agnes. Thank you for your service." Agnes felt an immediate kinship with him, and they soon fell into an easy conversation about their experiences in the military. Samuel watched from across the yard, his heart full of joy seeing the two most important people in his life bonding. As the sun began to set, Samuel's parents pulled them aside. His mother hugged Agnes tightly, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you for making our son so happy," she whispered. Samuel's father clapped him on the back. "You've found a good one, son. Don't let her go." Agnes and Samuel exchanged a loving glance, both knowing that they had no intention of ever letting go. In the months that followed, Agnes and Samuel continued their work for veterans with renewed vigor. Their love story had captured the hearts of many, and they used that platform to raise awareness and funds for various veteran support programs. At a charity gala they organized, Agnes stood at the podium, her voice strong and clear as she addressed the crowd. "What started as a simple act of kindness on a plane has turned into something beyond our wildest dreams," she said, her eyes finding Samuel's in the audience. "It's shown us that love can bloom in the most unexpected places, and that together, we can make a real difference in the lives of those who have served our country." Samuel joined her on stage, taking her hand in his. The crowd erupted in applause, moved by their story and their dedication to the cause. As they stood there, hand in hand, Agnes and Samuel knew that this was just the beginning of their journey together. They had found love in the most unexpected of circumstances, and their story continued to inspire others. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they were ready to face them, together. If you enjoyed the story of Samuel and Agnes, I handpicked this next story that will touch your heart. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it,